Hello, everyone. We're going to take a look at some news today. We're going to take a look at the Crown and Skull. I got the very cool looking gold cover Crown and Skull there, just got in the mail today, behind me there over my shoulder. And before we do that, and also, of course, you can grab the cool looking normal cover from the website. But before we do that, we're going to dig into a little bit of news. And while we're doing that, if you all want to start taking some guesses on what are the 6 classic adventures that are going to be in the Infinite Staircase releasing in July. I think it's going to be very similar to Tales from the Yawning Portal, which were basically just old adventures redone to 5th edition with almost no changes except for what was required for 5th edition. We know Lost Caverns of Sojkanth is one of them, and we have some good guesses so far. So Nick's got Cult of the Reptile God. That would be an amazing first level adventure to do. Forgotten Temple of Tharsden I have, but I'm afraid that one's too close in levels to Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, so I don't know if that one will get done or not. We'll see. But yeah, leave in the chat if you think of any other ones that you think might make that anthology. Again, that's going to be 6 adventures, levels 1 through 13. We know one of them is Lost Caverns of Sojkanth, which we ran on my channel. You can go back and look at the YouTube channel for d20play and see us playing Lost Caverns of Sojkanth. Last week we played Chapter 5 of Phandelver and Below. So we got out of the part of Phandelver and Below that was basically the original starter set, and we're on to the new material. So I'm excited for that. We're going to be continuing that tonight. If you're in the chat, chime in with where you're from, and let's start taking a look at the news here. So for news, the first thing we'll look at is Dungeons and Dragons turning 50 and what's coming out. They gave all the release dates for the stuff coming out in 2013. We have the 50th anniversary wallpaper you can download. They're going to be at a lot of conventions and a lot of events, from Gary Con to Gen Con to Gamehole Con, many more there. Upcoming book releases. This is a little disappointing for me. Tell me what you think. I thought these book releases were all going to be the new version, the 2024 Player's Handbook and on. But it looks like what they're doing is these are basically the capstone things for the current version of D&D. And then 2024 will release after them. So we have the Vecna Eve of Ruin coming out May 2024. Making of Original Dungeons and Dragons, that looks really cool. That's coming out in June 18, 2024. Nick says, I could see Against the Cult of the Reptile God as my safe bet. Maybe some, oh yeah, Desert of Desolation. That'd be really cool. Now, what do you think would be like in the 3 to 5 range? Because they'll probably have something at first, something 3 to 5, something 5 to 7. Sojkanth is like 7, 8, 9. So we need something like in the 3 range, but I'm going to add Desert of Desolation to my list here. So keeping a list. We got Lost Caverns, and we slide in Desert of Desolation before Lost Caverns. I think that's like 5th level, 6th level, 7th level. Desert of Desolation. That's a good call, Nick. Save that. Okay, so then back to what's going on for 2024 releases. Quest from the Infinite Staircase, we were talking about guessing at the adventures for, that's July 2024. And I think just like basically the Tales from the Yawning Portal, a lot of the 2E Ravenloft modules fit in that 3 to 5 range, yeah. Anyone ever play Feast of Goblins? That thing was enormous. Okay, then we have the 2024 Player's Handbook coming out in September, so near the end of the year. Dungeon Master's Guide in November, Monster Manual in February next year, so not a 2024 book. Dan Dillon just confirmed on X just today that these dates aren't slipped. Those were the dates. So that's interesting. So they're sticking with those were the dates, and I'm really surprised that far out, but that makes sense for them still working on it in May, and for them finishing up the playtest when they did, and if they want to do any more playtest, we'll see if they do. So then we have Vecna Eve of Ruin. And this one, um, we're going to save existence from total annihilation, character levels 10 through 20, a tour of the multiverse to revisit beloved settings such as Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Ravenloft, Dragonlance, and Greyhawk. This has me a little bit worried. Tell me what you think. I haven't liked the whirlwind tour adventures they've been doing lately, like Spelljammer, where you like have one encounter on a planet, then you go to the next planet, have one encounter, next planet, one encounter. I didn't like that at all. We'll see how it goes, though. We'll see how the Vecna Eve of Ruin is going to be, if it's going to be like that. Then we have the making of the original Dungeons and Dragons 1970 to 77. That'll be really cool. There's some great stuff out. You know, you got uh, Ben Riggs' book. You got Blackmore did an amazing video. I think it's on Vivo. Um, but definitely check out that video, and all that early stuff is really cool. First draft of D&D written in 1973. They're going to have that'll be really neat. Then we have Quest from the Infinite Staircase, then the 2024 books, and then new merch connections on that Lego stuff. They've been starting to show some Lego stuff. That looks neat. So now let's dig a little deeper into what is Vecna Eve of Ruin. A whirlwind tour of the multiverse, 30 new stat blocks, 32 maps. It's going to be on D&D Beyond Maps. Who's used D&D Beyond Maps? It looks like it's getting better fast. And it's really encouraging that D&D Beyond is still partnering with Roll20. They're still partnering with, or they just started partnering with Foundry. So that's all encouraging. Play as high-level heroes. Vecna's Major League villain. And adventure starts at 10th level. They'll get to 20th level by the end of it. Takes players on a whirlwind tour of the multiverse in search of pieces of the legendary Rod of Seven Parts. I wonder if they'll revisit any of the old Rod of Seven Parts adventure. I have that actually on my shelf behind me there. And then more on Vecna. Now, here is a picture for the making of D&D. That looks cool. Then picture of Quest from the Infinite Staircase. Nicholas said, I feel like if Eve of Ruin can focus on just one location from each of those settings, it can be okay. Yeah, right. If it's just Castle Ravenloft, or I don't know what it'd be for Ravenloft, Castle Greyhawk in Greyhawk. And we're going to be getting Castle Greyhawk, right, from Troll Lord Games. So that'll be neat. So that's a good point, Nick. Okay, then we have some bad news. I don't know who's seen this, but Joe Manganiello basically came on, said that the Dragonlance series is dead. Wizards didn't want to keep going with it, which is a shame. They certainly had a hard time with their movie recently. They had a hard time with the hardcover release. I think that was largely on them trying to, remove the OGL and getting a lot of bad blood. The Dragonlance release itself, I think it might have been that people wanted that to be the original adventure, and it was a different adventure. It still felt pretty Dragonlance-y. Of course, they changed it all to 5th edition, so you lose all that first edition setting feeling. Kenders can be anything. Kenders can be mages of high sorcery when they weren't in the first edition. And so there's a lot more wide open stuff there. But I thought the adventure actually was really cool. It felt very Dragonlance, and it niched into a place in the Dragonlance where you could do the adventure and not mess up the original story. But back to this. So Wizards is holding it back, not doing it. Manganiello even tried to sell it or tried to buy it from Wizards, and they wouldn't buy it. So, or they would sell it. So that's no good. And finally, the last one here, share this tab. I got the official Dungeons and Dragons cocktail book. Pretty soon we'll have the official Dungeons and Dragons Pop-Tarts and everything. Okay, that's the news. Let's take a look now at Crown and Skull. So who's got Crown and Skull already? Anyone in the chat have it? And what do you think of it? We're actually going to have Brandon, the designer of Crown and Skull, on next week. So if you have any questions about why things are the way they are, then we can I'll carry those over to talk to Brandon next week, and you can throw them in the messages even after the video too, and I'll grab those for Brandon next week. So let me share this instead. Crown and Skull. Okay, so rather than flipping through, I'll be looking at the book itself. And right away, one thing different about it is it's a setting in addition to a system. So you have a lot of setting stuff mixed in here with the system. It's got mapless maps. You guys know that's not my thing, but I'm willing to entertain it, give it a try, and see how much fun it is. It's certainly an interesting mechanic that they have set up for it. The North Holds is the setting. Hanker and Fernale is one of the characters of Brandon's. So much more player focus, it looks like, in the game. The players are making a lot more of the rolls. They're making the defense rolls. So monsters don't make attack rolls, players make defense rolls, it looks like. Now that can be good or it can be bad. If you and it can be good or bad the reverse too. If you have a good fast DM, things will move fast for you. If you have bad DM, things will move slow. If you're relying on 5 different players to all be fast, you might find you have some slow players, so that'll grind things down a little bit. So, it's, you know, either way could have drawbacks. There is kind of not really an alignment system, it looks like, but kind of similar to an alignment system. You have crown and you have skull, which the players will pick. The characters pick when they get some experience. And I think it's kind of analogous to law and chaos. We'll see when we talk to Brandon what his thoughts were on the crown and skull. The groups begin with a hometown. There's a really nice map I have here in the background. Um, and there's 3 possible hometowns the players can start with. Talk a little bit about game flow. Each round has 5 phases, and the players choose which phase they act in. I don't know why they wouldn't want to act all in phase 1, so they all go before the monsters, but we'll talk to Brandon and see what his thoughts were about that. When you're doing rolls, it looks like you're making d20 rolls, so you're using a 20-sided die, and you're trying to get at or below a target number. A 1's like a critical success, 20 is like a critical failure. Enemies do not make attack rolls. They have an enemy stat attack acts as a penalty to the player's defense roll. And the player has a defense starting at 6 if they have no armor and going up from there. So example here, the serpent lashes out at you. The viper has attack 3, so you roll defense with a -3 penalty. I wonder if that's supposed to be a +3 penalty because lower numbers are better. Rolling damage effects, there's no 2-hit roll. You roll damage instantly. Add the total rolled for damage inflicted. This roll can be reduced by an enemy's stat called defense. When injured, and this is a really interesting mechanic. So you have attrition. When you're injured, when you're hit, you cross off equipment or you cross off skills. So there's no hit points. You just have a list of your skills and a list of your equipment, and you start crossing them off. And once you cross it off, you can't use it until you repair it or you restore it. And here's the basic attrition types. So basic attrition, you choose 1 equipment or 1 skill to get crossed off. Flash is skills, equipment's equipment. Destroy destroys random equipment, and you cross off a randomly selected skill. So that's pretty painful. And then brutal, you cross off D6 total random equipment and skills. Total inventory, so you can have 10 skills and 10 items in your inventory. And all small items are counted in a single pouch. Then healing, when you're healed, you get to restore a crossed off skill. So you basically can take about 20 hits, is what it's saying here, if you can have 10 skills and 10 items. Rest and recovery, you regain a combined D4 of equipment and skills with a night's rest in safety. Once safety found and enemies or timers are incoming, take a breather to regain 1 equipment or skill. And if a hit can't be absorbed, so if you're knocked down to all your skills are gone, or for example, your skills are all gone, you take a flash, or your equipment's all gone, you take a basic, or everything's all gone, I mean, you take equipment, or everything's all gone, you take a basic, then you take a hit to the heart and you'll die at the end of the next phase 5 unless healed. The next phase 5. So what if you were in phase 4 and you took that hit? I think maybe it means the next round, not the phase 5 that's coming right after the phase 4 in the current round. Last brand in that. As you can see, there's 5 phases here each round. And once you pick your phase, it's locked in for the encounter. On your phase, so here's your action economy. Basically, you can move or perform an action, but not both. You can do both, but then all enemies will get a +5 on their attacks against you for 1 round. And you can only do that when you're doing a move and an action, not 2 moves or 2 actions. I don't know why not 2 moves. I would think that'd be a fine way to do double moving, and taking a penalty on enemies getting better attacks on you. Foes will act in 1 to 3 phases per round. So like a solo monster might be able to act multiple phases, it looks like. Um, Hero points for players to buy items and upgrade equipment. So you can make a character from scratch using hero points, or you can, there's some pre-gens in here. If you want to just grab some pre-gens, try out the game, see how you like it. Hero points can only be spent to upgrade a character when resting in a safe place with required facilities or services. Here's the a 1's a crit, 20's a crit failure. Hero coins can be redeemed to re-roll or roll entirely, so it's like fate or luck or inspiration. They can maximize the damage or output of an attack or an effect. You can freely give them between players. I never like that in any system because it doesn't feel like the player earned it if just anyone can give it to you. So then for beginners, if you just want to jump into a game, you choose a hometown, then choose a character template, and then you're ready to go. Every 10 hero points earned, you'll gain a bonus reward specific to your hometown. Interesting. Then they go into some detail on the hometowns. Here's the character template. So let's take a look at these. So you got a soldier. You specialize in weapons and armor. On adventures and quests, your allies look to you to take a beating and see foes dispatched. So your flaw is that you're stubborn. You set your mind to a thing with tenacity. Your core ability is Battle Master. Damage dice rolled maximum are rolled again. There's no limit to the number of times they can explode. So core abilities are kind of like, almost like classes in this system. There's you'll see a short list of core abilities, and they really kind of define your character to be some type of character. We'll see them in these sample players here. Then you have skills. You have armor 8. So you're trying to get, if you're trying to make an armor check, you roll d20 and you try to get an 8 or below. So that's like, less than 50% chance. Evade 8, knowledge, military tactics 8, muscle 7. You'll notice there are no ability scores. You have no ability scores, you just have skills. And then equipment, choose 9 points of basic equipment and basic armament. So we'll look at those in a second. So some other example core abilities. Uncanny shot, roll an extra damage die with all ranged weapons. Nick says, core abilities remind me a bit of the talents in Shadow Dark as well. Yeah, a little bit. You can forego those core abilities and basically make a character that is a jack of all trades, but they don't have like one focus core. But we'll see core abilities cost more points. They cost like 15 points, and you could have like 5 other things with those 15 points. Okay, so then erase this here. Adventure, uncanny shot, sage, empath, gain. So you know a lot of things free of cost with the sage. That makes sense. Smith, no core ability. So here's the example of one that's a jack of all trades. So Smith's really good at armor, really good at repair. That'd come in handy, trying to repair all equipment for sure. Survival's really high, and a lot of equipment. So there's an example of a jack of all trades type character. And see, he's got a flaw as a drunkard. Let's see. You get 50 points. So let's see how this matches up with 50 points. So armor is 10, repair is 10, survival 14, and resist 9, so that's 43. Then 12 more is 55. And for every flaw, I think you get 5 points. So that lines up. Cleric core ability, Paragon of Faith. Your faith skill grows by 2 with a successful cast, maxes at 16. You can turn undead with it. Hoodlum, core ability, Brutal Fighter. Each of your melee attacks may hit 2 foes with a single damage roll. There's pretty cool. These character prompts, they're pretty fun. And another thing you'll note, the ancestries don't generate any abilities, any skills, anything. They're basically just story information for this setting. Um, Greg Cherry says, I followed Hank for some time. I like his creative energy. Yeah. So one thing I liked about Shadow Dark was just how brutally succinct all the writing was. And Hank's not that way, but his writing's really filled with, what do I want to say? Uh, it makes you feel, a certain way. So it's not really long writing, um, but it really gets to the heart of stuff. So it's a little bit more wordy than Shadow Dark. Was best at as Drunken and Dragons, the good old days. Yeah, so I do like this writing. It's more verbose than Shadow Dark, but it's filled with definitely character. Definitely filled with a lot of character. Okay, so we had prompts, and then go on here. Okay, it's like I was saying, ancestry makes no difference in any of your skills or any of your abilities. Equipped with, you just kind of use this to decide what you're going to get for equipment. And then story stuff, it all started when I left the cult. I joined the cult. Our village was called to arms. When I found the red crystal, very cool stuff there. And then character prompts last, but now I seek and destroy evildoers, simply gather power, make a mess of things. Great, great character stuff there. Greg says his first game published, I think. That's nice. Now he did like index card RPG, right? And I haven't ever had a chance to play that. He also had some stuff having to do with hardcore fifth edition, which fifth edition needs that if you want to be hardcore in any way. Custom character creation. So a quick aside for fifth edition, what I generally do is ramp up the damage the monsters put out. So it makes it more deadly significantly, but really by the time characters get to 10th level and higher, the standard challenge ratings is way too low. It's like a first time player picking up a 10th level character. It's designed for them, to make it challenging for them, but not for a skilled player with their character. You got to really ramp up that. Okay, custom character creation. So 50 hero points. You can choose flaws. Each gives you 5 more points. We saw that when we were looking at one of the pre-gens. At max 2, core abilities take 15. You can have 10 skills max. Remember, every skill's a hit, so the more skills you have, the more hits you can take. But if you have 10 skills, they're all going to be pretty low, right? I think it's a 1-for-1 point value, yeah. So if you spent all 50 points on 10 skills, every skill would be 5. You'd have a 25% chance of being successful on it. Then custom character creation. 10 items max in your inventory. So similar to Shadow Dark, similar to 100 dungeons, 10 item max in the inventory. Some character flaws, for examples here. Core abilities. So you can see these core abilities, there's 12 of them, and they kind of make it like 12 classes. You got Battle Master, you have been trained as a soldier. When you roll max damage, you roll again. Brutal Fighter, you hit 2 people at once. There's one here that does double damage. Don't see it off top of my Protector. When using a shield, you change a failed defense roll by an ally to a successful one once per round, if they're nearby, etc. And then skills, big long list here of skills. And then your equipment. I don't know about backpack. It says you can carry 2 additional items, but the backpack, does it take a slot, so you only get 1 additional item? I bet it's meant to be 2 on top of the one the backpack took up, I imagine. Because it does cost a lot of points. Other items here. Large items, you can all the way up to a fortress, a massive impregnable castle on a cliff, 300 points. It says I've started keeping the hit points the same, but maximum damage once level 8ish is achieved in 5e sooner if the party is experienced. It's been a lot of fun for all. That sounds pretty reasonable, Nick. For a long time, I would up the hit points they have, but that just made it a grind. And definitely having them do more damage to the party gives the party more sense of urgency, but doesn't make it grindy. So I definitely like that. All right. Large items, we went through fortress there. So then equipment. So you can do anywhere from D4 to D12 damage. It's interesting. The greatsword only does D10, but the battle axe does D12. That seems odd. And the greatsword says uses 2 hands, but none of the other ones say use 2 hands. So I think there's a little bit of DM fine tuning that we could do there to lay out what's required. Like another column for number of hands would be good. Armor. So each of your armor items not only gives you a bonus to your defense, but also has some other note, like a cloak gives you bonus to your stealth. Leather vest doesn't help you against blunt force. Chainmail's noisy. Helm draws enemy attention. Wood shield absorb 2 hits before attrition. Steel shield absorb 3. Tower shield clumsy, ignore attrition from arrows. Very interesting. And all characters have a base 6 defense before adding on their armor slots. So base 6 defense up to a maximum of 18 on your defense, up to 10 item slots, but only 1 per body location actually works. Greg says, oops, I really enjoyed the Legends and the Mist playtest, a very different take on RPGs. With no numbers, it's hard to min-max. Yeah. Immediately backed. Beautiful art production. Nice. Okay, back to the armor. So then you can do custom equipment. Oh, there's the add additional damage dice. So you definitely want to get a deadly weapon. It costs 3 extra points, but it gives you, instead of 1d12, you do 2d12 damage with your deadly weapon. Bleeding target bleeds same damage for d4 rounds. So that's a lot of damage. Imagine if you did 12 damage to them, they took it for 3 more rounds. Cold Forge, this metal equipment is immune to corrosion. You can also put limitations on your gear, like if it's breakable or stolen or other stuff like that. Okay, then we get to spells. So there are some basic spells that you can copy, or you can kind of tailor your spells as you like. And we can see all spells require audible words and gestures with both hands to cast. And you can spend points to make that not a requirement. The default duration is 1d6 phases. You can extend that with purchasing more points towards your spells. Default effect output of spells of 1d6, so 1d6 damage or 1d6 increase to your armor, etc. And touch is the default range, and single targets the default targets. And then you spend points to increase that for your spells. Okay. No single effect can be stacked more than 3 times. So here's some different spell effects that you can start adding on to your spells. And here's some limitations you put on them to make them cost less. And then for acquiring new spells, this is interesting. You can require that Elder Wizards are necessary to get these like really potent spells, ones that cost 20 points or more. Companions, you can purchase companions. So basically, that's how you start out. You have 50 points to make a character, and you make it from that stuff. And then there's some neat character creation ways. They have the one called Discovery here, which is kind of like a gauntlet in other versions of games, like in Shadowdark. So this method places your character in a vulnerable state of amnesia with little to no equipment. And then as you adventure, you learn more about your character. That's a fun one. Okay, so that's character building. Pretty straightforward. You have skills, you have items, you use points to buy them. If you don't want to go through the necessary steps to do all that work, you can just take one of these pre-gens. And there's 6 pre-gens there that you can take. So a character, you can see how little makes up a character. All the rest is really much kind of story stuff. So all the stuff about these character prompts, about you being a sure-footed stout folk or a furry little proudfoot or a mottled frogkin, don't affect your actual character stats. So that's pretty neat. Okay, then how do you advance in levels? You have deeds. When a deed is done, each character receives 3 hero points. And so, of course, hero points reflects you gaining experience and also you gaining treasures, right? Because you can spend them on equipment. Renown is as you get more experience, more deeds, you get better known around the world. And then once you get to a total of 25 or more hero points through deeds, then you get to pick if you're part of the crown or part of the skull. So anyone online, if you want to see anything, let's take a quick peek. This is about as far as I got when I was looking through the first time. And after here, I think it's largely world stuff. A lot of cool and famous villains, orders, guilds, and trusts. And then you get into paths of magic, and it gets into more detail about making magic using characters. I like the Starfallen. It reminded me a lot of what they were doing in the Lord of the Rings new thing on Amazon, which didn't follow the book hardly at all, but Starfallen reminded me a lot of Gandalf. Uh, News of your arrival in the world is spreading. Shaman seers and Star Watchers here and there. Choose a basic spell. Uh, Proudfoots have an instinct for elder things. Proudfoot youngster approaches you as an apprentice and helper. Another, no, point to Gandalf. Insect friend, remember Gandalf with the moth. So that reminded me a lot of Gandalf. But they have the wizard, um, Starfallen, Ancient One, Demonologist, Scribed in Flesh. Some really cool, story sources for magic. Got a question here. Not super keen on the Crown and Skull setting, but I love Hank's writing style. And I think the system could be a genuine game changer. It's got huge differences from what we're used to playing, doesn't it? Really big differences. I'm definitely going to try. I'm going to run a game for sure and see how it goes. There's like a sample adventure in here we'll get to in a little bit too. Wild Magic, The Holy Path, Wild Magic, um, Anti-Magic, then a bunch of cool illustrations. Okay, then a bunch of stuff on how to be a good DM, a good GM. Always useful advice. Okay, let me go to the table of contents. See what we want to take a peek at. So there you got the player's guide, 66 pages, then Paths of Magic to 87, illustrations, GM's guide, Atlas, dungeons. Okay, so you got 3 dungeons there, it looks like, included, and then creatures. And there's some really cool stuff in these creatures, so we'll get to that in a second too. Tables and treasures. Let's go to the first dungeon, Ruinmore, on 232. Wonder if this is hyperlinked. Yeah. Wonder if there is. I think there are bookmarks. Okay, so 232. Ruinmore. Okay, so let's just look at this one page here. And we'll look at how it's doing the mapless maps, which I think is pretty interesting. Nick says, I love RPGs that include renown systems. The early seasons of AL utilized the faction renown was a lot of fun. I agree. It's too bad that that kind of fell by the wayside. So let's check out these mapless adventures. The Rose, Ruinmore. After exploring the outermost streets and debris-strewn alleys of Ruinmore, you enter the Rose, where narrow avenues access burned or buried houses in all directions. As you pick your way through, a powerful gloom hangs in the air. Something stirs in the rubble, just out of sight. You are entering a realm of ghosts. So you roll 2d4 until the area exit is rolled. So you first roll a d4 for what the terrain around you is like. And I've seen Brandon is like early videos, a lot of 5e, how to DM videos and stuff like that. Big fan of scatter terrain. So this looks like that'll be really come into play a lot here. Would love for you to this for Legends of Mist. Yeah, I need to check that out for sure. I don't think it's your kind of game, but would love to hear your thoughts. Yeah, I love checking out new games, even if they're not my type of game. It's always fun to see how different games are done. Okay, so you roll d4 for location. For example, location 1, Pillar Fall. A daunting clutter of fallen stonework must be crawled across to proceed. Each fallen column here must weigh 10,000 pounds of stone. 10,000 stone. The pillars offer many hiding places. And then you roll an encounter. So you roll the 1, Phantom Dogs. D8 Phantom Dogs appear. D8 additional each round for 3 rounds. They circle and attack, hungry for souls. So you can be hiding from them. You could be trying to climb over the columns to get away from them. Go on to the next location. You roll a d4 again. I don't know if you like cross off the ones you already rolled, or if you could, in theory, get back to Pillar Fall again. So then you have upheaval. Houses have toppled inward, creating a barely passable space. Each step has a 50-50 chance of causing a collapse. Then Collapse Tavern. One huge building has crumbled into ruins here. One way is through. Once inside, scouting investigation skills will be needed to find any possible route. And finally, 4, Cleared Avenue. This cobble street is passable even though scattered with rubble and fallen timbers. Exit. Battlefield tides and rubble heaps can be accessed beyond. So then you go into battlefield tides or rubble heaps. Rubble heaps being the next one, I think. Yeah. So it's kind of almost like a choose your own adventure where you pick, the path you're going to. It'd be interesting to see how this plays out. So that's Ruin More. And then you got Ghoul Glack and more. Okay, so that's the adventures. Now let's look at some of the dark forces. Enemy list, monsters and beasts, intelligent foes. That's cool. So starting on page 259, you have monsters and beasts. Let's talk about enemies. Okay, so enemies have 5 stats. Their hit points, a simple pool of hit points at 0, they're killed. Their attacks, they don't roll their attacks, but rather players defend with their own rolls. The attack stat is a penalty to the player's defense. Their defense, to resist an attack, is subtracted from the hero damage roll. Some attacks degrade defense, such as the degrading armor. Phases. Each enemy takes action in 1 or more of the 5 phases up to 3. And then this is cool. They have like a tactics die where you roll to see what they randomly do. When the phase comes up, monsters do 1 to 3 actions called tactics. As a GM, roll a d6. So there's usually a common one, common attack in this case, or displacement, dash, movement, target change or regroup, or area of effect attacks that hit all or all near foes. Will also include what type of attrition it will inflict, basic, flash, equipment, etc. Enemies need not be bound to tactic rolls at all times. They may just move to engage. Getting in attack position or range before rolling tactics. Enemies tend to use move to engage to reach their most recent or most severe attacker. Okay. Okay, enemies are listed with the following information blocks, name, and that's it. So let's look at some enemies. Let's look at skeleton. Here we go. Standard skeleton. Magically animated human remains, often armed. I love that tactics type mechanic. Might steal that for some more feral monsters in other games. Yeah, I do too. Pretty cool tactic. So the skeleton. It's got 10 hit points. It's got a defense of 3. So if you did damage to it with an attack, with your, say, your battle axe doing d12, you could not kill it with its 3 defense with 1 hit. It'd take you 2 hits. Unless, of course, you had the deadly weapon or something else that adds more damage. So skeletons looks like they go in phase 3. Tactics 1. Why did the tactics have a number again? Does anyone remember? They have these tactics. This guy's got 2 tactics, so I don't know. Phase 4. Anyway, stumble about, seek a new target, use rotting weapons such as iron spears or rusty scimitars, basic attrition, cleave, enough strength to swipe its weapon at up to 3 foes in 1 strike with basic attrition. So this thing would be attack, and I'd say, okay, players 1, 2, and 3, skeleton's cleaving you. It's attack 3. And then those players would have their defense roll, and say their armor class was mid-range. So say they're like or their defense was mid-range. Say they got like a 11 or 12 defense, and the attack's a 3. So they'd have to roll a 9 or lower. And if they don't, they're going to take 1 basic attrition for each one of them. So pretty straightforward. Now let's look at like a dragon, something big. Dragon. Deathkeeper. Demon. That's cool. We could look at a demon. Dragon Elder. 250 hit points. 10 attack. 10 defense. Ouch. You're going to have to be doing a lot of damage to get through that 250 hit points with his 10 defense going. Phase 3, Tactics 2. How many times the enemy can attack? Okay. So you rolled Tactics twice. So Richard says the text number is how many times the enemy can attack. So that's cool. Makes sense. Tactic 1, Galloping Flight. With wings and 4 legs, the dragon moves anywhere it chooses. If moving by land, all those in the way roll evade or suffer basic attrition. So evade's a skill, and if you don't have it, I think you're just taking basic attrition. Tactics 2 through 5, Fire and Magic roll on the attacks below. There's the attacks. So you can have like another set of tables for tactics for really powerful creatures. And 6, Tail Swipe. Sweeps the entire scene. Nothing can withstand the attack, including buildings and terrain. With a successful evade roll, only suffer 1 basic attrition, but if no evade, suffer 1 basic and 1 brutal. And brutal's D6. So that's rough. But this is a Elder Dragon. So Fire and Magic roll below for their main attacks. Fire Chasm. Claws slam the ground, sending a huge crack to either side, brimming with jets of fire. Inflict basic attrition and afterburn as needed. Alter the battlefield. That's so cool. Red Lightning, a massive bolt, hits 1 target, striking their heart instantly. So they just die instantly if by the end of the next round they're not healed. If evaded, only suffer brutal attrition. That's awesome. Yes, you roll tactics twice. If they have 2 tactics that can attack on multiple phases, they're pretty tough. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Now let's go back to a demon. That was demon. Ancient, inhuman entities of pure hate and evil. 75 hit points, can only be harmed by cold iron or magical weapons. Attack 5, defense 5, 2 different phases, 2 tactics. So there's going to be a lot of damage coming. Soul Ripper. Ebony claws, soul piercing screams, dead men's teeth. A melee attack that inflicts flesh attrition if crossing off one's final skill inventory due to this attack, a hit to the heart is instantly inflicted. Possession. Possessed victims roll d4 for behaviors. Oh boy. Escape, flee the scene, hoping to possess others. Pee and leap on a victim's. Oh man. Demons are rough. Okay, so now I haven't got to it yet, but I'm not sure how you would try to balance encounters. I have to do a little bit more researching on that and reading on that. If there's any like level definitions or anything for these creatures, you can tell, from the skeleton to the dragon, there's a huge change. Okay, back to the table of contents. So that is the enemies. Now let's look at tables and treasures starting. Well, let's look at some potions at 302. Or let's see. Let's go to crown and skull. So once you pick the crown or the skull, you can't take the opposite treasure. So I'll go to 307 here. Oh, these are cool. And you can buy them too. They have point values, so you can buy them. Coins and cash. That's neat. Heirlooms, gems and minerals, rare gems and minerals. A rare gem found near dragon eggs with 10 points. Glyph wax, soft mineral, but very resilient to melting, 10 points. And I wonder if you can trade these 10 points in for other stuff. Chunk and floats. Potions. Speed potion, move twice in a single phase, 1 point. Drought of Might, gain +3 muscle for 1 round, 1 point. Healing potion, recover 1 skill, 1 point. Healing damage on, recover all skills. Wow. 2 points. Potent healing, recover 1 skill, and you can do it 3 times. Nice. So there's some bunch of potions, some froggish equipment, magic bits, crown treasure. And these don't have points. I think you get them. See, value unlisted, crown items are bestowed. They're often avoided in markets. Skull treasure, value unlisted, black markets will prize these items, but haggle fiercely. So, for example, Orc's Bane, a dried herb, 3 uses. The smoke is toxic only to orcs. Book of Graves, a detailed atlas of burials, even secret or unmarked ones. Weird stuff, masterwork items. Yeah, lots of cool things. Oh, these rare books are neat. A lot of world lore in these, it looks like. Man, I cannot wait to play this game. It looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. And really getting into the world lore is where I think a lot of the fun would be. So it's gonna be, I think, a little bit better in a longer campaign than a one shot for sure. You won't really scratch much of that itch in a one shot, I don't think. And more tables. So that's a quick first look at Crown and Skull. We're gonna have Brandon on next week. And if you have any questions for Brandon, put them in the comments below. I'll fire up the video for next week early, so you can put the questions in that video early before Brandon jumps on about why he did the things he did in this adventure system. I'm probably going to run it a game. I'll post it uh, on my Twitter and on my Discord and probably on my YouTube channel for anyone who wants to play. That's it. Thanks for watching, everyone.